magistrates conceded to the consistory the right of excommunication. Calvin wrote to Bullinger on February 24, 1555, "Recently, it was finally decided, after a long struggle, that the right of excommunication belongs to us." For the proper discipline of the church, Calvin gave his life. What were the fundamental features of the biblical church discipline that Calvin restored to the church? And not just to the church in Geneva, but to the Reformed church, after 500 years. I call your attention this afternoon to 6 main features of the church discipline that Calvin restored to the church. In the first place, the form of church discipline restored by Calvin was Presbyterian. That is, Calvin restored the biblical principle that the authority to rule in the local congregation resides in the body of elders. The Reformers, Calvin taking the lead, repudiated the hierarchical system of church government maintained by the Roman Catholic Church and rejected altogether the idea of the supremacy of the Pope. Calvin asserted over against the Romish view the truth that Christ is the one king and head of the church. No pope, no bishop, no church council may rob him of his crown rights. His rule of the church is rooted in and reflects his redemptive work on behalf of the church. This rule of Christ he exercises through his word and by his Spirit. The Bible is the constitution of all sound church government. And the Bible is the sole standard for the church's discipline. In rejecting the hierarchical system of church government, Calvin brought the church back to the biblical principle of the rule in the church of elders. The King Jesus Christ, through his word and according to the standard of his word, exercises his rule in the local congregation through elders. Calvin restored the office of ruling elder. In each local congregation, the elders were to govern so that that local congregation was autonomous and self-ruling. Government by a body of elders, all of those elders themselves being equal in authority, having all of them one vote, was a cornerstone of Calvin's return to biblical church discipline. In the second place, Calvin insisted that in its work of discipline, the church was to be self-governing and independent. Not only did Calvin face the opposition of the libertines in Geneva, who wanted no discipline at all, but he also constantly was at odds with the civil government, which always and again attempted to intrude itself into matters of discipline, and especially excommunication. Many of the other reformers, as Luther and Zwingli, somewhat due to the force of circumstances, did give to the state, to the civil magistrate, a large hand in the discipline of the church. And there were those in Calvin's day who contended that now that the civil magistrate was godly, that is, if there were at least reformed magistrates, the government of the church might safely be handed over to them. Constantly, Calvin was under the pressure to concede to the city councils the right of discipline and excommunication, but steadfastly Calvin refused. And steadfastly, he maintained a sharp distinction between the rights and the legitimate authority of the magistrate and the rights and the authority of the church. It might be to us today a question whether Calvin was always himself consistent in maintaining this principle. We would have questions about concessions, perhaps, that Calvin made to the civil magistrate, concessions that we would not be at all in favor of. Nevertheless, the fact of the matter is that for this principle, the principle that the church is self-governing, Calvin fought tenaciously. Again and again, he refused to tolerate the magistrate's encroachment on the rights and duties of the consistory, especially the exercise of excommunication. At one point, he handed in his resignation, and he declared that he would sooner die than comply with the city council's demand that a man who had been excommunicated be granted the right on Sunday to partake of the Lord's Supper. He refused to administer the sacrament to that man whom the consistory had excommunicated.